So it is near the end of the year, and we're getting close to the end of the holiday season too. So let's do yet again another Transformer Slag podcast Patreon listener question. We're going to jump into the Patreon listener bag of all the fans that have been submitting. And if you want to be like one of our Patreon listener questions here today, or you just want to join the Patreon, help support the podcast, and let us know we're doing a half decent job here in the Transformer world, again, patreon.com/protoman. Or check the pinned comment below or the description below. And what does that get you? It gets your name in the end credit scroll at the end of every segment moving forward of your patronage. Gets you access to the Transformer Slag podcast Discord, where we hang out, talk Transformers, break the news, share sales and deals, so you can make your hobby a little cheaper. Get exclusive lore downloads, so you could get some of that rare Transformer lore into your system. Depending on what tier also, dare I say, you might even get a chance to be part of the Transformer Slag Patreon listener question. And we have a Patreon listener question here, and it comes from the Grimluck. I love that name, the Grimluck. And Grimluck wants to know, all the Hasbro's other brands have a specific unified collector line, aka Star Wars' Black Series and Marvel Legends. Could Legacy, that we'll be getting next year, be that for the Transformer brand? A one unified aesthetic incorporating all facets of the history of the Transformer brand? Thank you, Grimluck. Well, Grimluck, you know what? How am I going to tackle this? So let's start with the first part of what you said. So you said Star Wars Black Series and Marvel Legends. There's a lot of similarities between those and pretty much what Hasbro is doing now. And I'm going to go into, like, I get a feeling this is going to be a long one. So we're going to go into a long-winded, off the top of my head kind of thing going on. But like with Star Wars Black Series, it started as something in the first couple of waves. It was like original trilogy with some prequel stuff. You know, they focused on the older stuff with a little bit of Clone Wars here and there. And that was the first few waves, you know, episode 4 to episode 6 with some young Anakin, young Obi-Wan and Clone Wars stuff. But then by the time they got to wave 3, I mean, it was a given. Force Awakens, the movie had come out. There's TV show stuff. They mixed in all the other stuff with it. And Black Series is now today what it is, which literally has everything. There's, you know, every card is on the table now. So it is, like you mentioned, that unified collector line that could have comic book characters, weird deep cut characters and everything like that. But I also felt like Black Series also existed because Hasbro was just like, you know, like, for the past 20 years, we had Power of the Force, and it did all of that. We sold every single character under the sun from Star Wars to fans. How do we get them to buy them all again? You do a 6-inch line, and the rest is history. It's kind of what the G.I. Joe line is right now with classifieds. Change the aesthetic, change the scale, and then you could get them to buy all those characters again. When you look at Marvel Legends, that kind of actually starts with Toy Biz. The company Toy Biz had Marvel Legends originally, and that line specifically was a comic book related line in terms of aesthetic and style. Yeah, there was the odd, you know, movie Daredevil at the time and Blade figure, but it primarily was the comic book aesthetic. Anything that clashed with cartoons was merely coincidental by choice of design. It wasn't until Toy Biz's like end of the line, like when it was on its way out and Hasbro was going to get the license for Marvel Legends, did they do like some Tobey Maguire Spider-Man stuff. I remember that was like near the end of it. But when Marvel had it, when Hasbro then got the Marvel Legends trademark and the master toy license for all that stuff, it was kind of the same thing too. Everything was originally comic book related, comic book aesthetic, comic book designs, everything on the written page. It wasn't until the MCU was really getting hot and all the Marvel movie stuff that they go, well, we have to do 6-inch stuff of all of these characters and stuff because it's money on the table. And I mean, when you really think about it, prior to them really doing that, they were already kind of testing the water because Hasbro also had their Marvel Universe 3-inch line or 3.25-inch line, which was very successful. And that line, more so than anything, right off the get-go, had all the different aesthetics. It had Marvel Ultimates continuity. It had cartoon stuff. It had movie stuff. It had older movie stuff. like the X-Men movie and everything like that, even the earlier Marvel movie stuff, not just the current Marvel stuff. They then did Iron Man. They did everything. So it really showed in a lot of ways that line, that 3-inch line of Marvel Universe, really reflected what Hasbro was going to be doing later on in the future with Transformers. And now let's get into Transformers. I hope it didn't bore you for that brief moment explaining kind of the lead into that. But, with Transformers, we have to kind of go, like, we have Transformers Legacy coming up next year, but we have to go back to Legacy's grandfather in a lot of ways, which was the Transformers Classics line in 2006. And, at that time, when that line came out in 2006, Generation 1 was barely 22 years old. It was a 22-year-old brand. Beast Wars was barely a 10-year-old brand. When they were going to celebrate the classics, they were going to be celebrating Generation 1, because everything else, there wasn't much really on the table to pull from that was considered old classics at that time. So when you look at the classics line, when it first started in 2006, it was almost all G1. The only exceptions that you could really lean on are, there was that Optimus Megatron Battle Begins 2-pack, and there was a tank Megatron in there, and that tank Megatron was green. Didn't have a green, with camo design on it, but it was green. So you could then interpret that as, let's say, a G2 Megatron. Sure, I'll give you that. And technically the first ever Beast Wars kind of figure in all of that, if you really want to be specific, is in the classics line. They had this legend scale, the small price point, and they were repainting all these Cybertron, molds. And they were like, okay, well, we're going to repaint Cybertron Leo Breaker, aka Liger Jack, into Lio Prime, aka Lio Convoy from Beast Wars 2nd. So that was the first true classics Beast Wars throwback, was that figure. And that was really it. It was otherwise a G1 celebration line. Because at that time in 2006, we had Titaniums. And Transformers Titaniums was the true celebration of all the different brands of Transformers. Transformers Titaniums, done by Don Figueroa. They pretty much they told Don, hey, here's all the trademarks we need you to use. You could do whatever you want afterwards. And Don mixed it up. Hey, we need to have an Optimus here. Okay, we're going to do like Dreamwave War Within Optimus. Oh, we need to have a Megatron. Let's do, Unicron Trilogy Cybertron Megatron. Oh, we need to do Starscream. Let's do like a Tetrajet, Titaniums, War Within Starscream. Oh, we need another Optimus. Okay, let's do this. You need Cheetor. You need that. You need a smokescreen. Let's do Alternators smokescreen. That was the line that really mixed it up. There was a lot of a little everything in that line at that time in 2006 of what they could pull from. A little bit of Unicron Trilogy, a little bit of comic book, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It was pretty cool. The engineering was kind of hit or miss, but you saw what they were trying to do there with the Titaniums line in 2006 that wasn't necessary to do in Generation 1 stuff with classics. Not to mention, at that same time in 2006, also on the shelves, was the Beast Wars 10th Anniversary line. So if you wanted your Beast Wars fix, you had that right there as an entire line. So why would they kind of, create their own competition and put a Cheetor in classics when you have a Cheetor with DVD and part of Transmutate for that 10th anniversary line on the shelves at the same time? So that's why I think that happened. Obviously, when we then go into 2007, those lines don't exist anymore. You still have the classics line, and the classics line still continued doing the Generation 1 lean, if you will. It was all Generation 1 characters, with the exception of they had some Minicon 3-packs, and those weren't really based on anybody, and they were original creations, and some could even argue maybe they're original creations to the Generation 1 continuity instead of the Unicron trilogy. But at the same time that they were doing that in 2007, the Michael Bay movie had come out, and we're in this kind of situation where okay, the Michael Bay movie's out. They do this Transformers Robot Heroes line, which was this small little PVC line of little cutesy Transformer figures that were articulated. And they were only G1 characters or Michael Bay movie characters initially. We'll get into that in a moment. When we get into next year, this is when things change. 2008. Aaron Archer, this is the Aaron Archer era, especially. Aaron Archer's like, we're going to do Transformers Universe. We're rebranding Transformers Classics, which Aaron also worked on, but now we're going to rebrand it into Transformers Universe. We're going to be celebrating the universe of Transformers. And even the Robot Heroes line, which was only G1 and movie stuff, was rebranded as Transformers Universe Robot Heroes and celebrated all those other brands too within the Robot Heroes. Now we got Robot Heroes of Beast Wars characters, we got Robot Heroes of Beast Machines characters, and so on and so forth. Even some unreleased stuff that ended up leaning more into robots in disguise and everything like that, and even Japanese. But we'll get into that afterwards. So that really opened it up. And Universe came out of the gate, and here with Transformers Universe, now we have G1, but we also have Beast Wars characters like Cheetor. We all of a sudden have animated characters like, you know, the Legend scale Bumblebee and Prowl. We had comic book adaptation characters from the Dreamwave universe with those 2-packs. We even had Unicron trilogy stuff like Hotshot and the reissue of the Unicron figure in that Supreme scale. So already off the bat, you had all those different continuities in there mixed with a whole bunch of other stuff too. I think also primarily at the time in 2008, now Titanium's was on its way out as a line. I think it had like 3 releases in that year. So it was done. So this was going to be the line that would celebrate all the different brands of Transformers. And when you get into 2009, then you're getting Beast Machines characters, you're getting Robots in Disguise 2001 characters, all in this Transformers Universe line. They were celebrating everything, and that was great. Then we get into the rebranding again. They rebrand Transformers Universe from Classics to Universe 2.0, as I call it, but Universe, and then they rebrand it again into what we know today as Transformers Generations. And with Transformers Generation, it kicked off, it started off right away with video game characters from the High Moon stuff. It had all these different aesthetics from all these different versions. We're getting comic book characters. We're getting, Beast Wars characters. We're getting IDW characters. It was this beautiful mix of a whole bunch of different stuff. And it was fantastic. Had comic book pack-ins, 30th anniversary, Thrilling 30, celebrate everything, all these deep cuts, all these deep aesthetics. Hey, maybe we're even going to do a little mini deluxe Insecticon in a 2-pack. All kinds of crazy stuff. It was really good. Again, that was the Aaron Archer era. Now, I don't want to sound negative. You could take from this what you will and give your opinion, but now we enter a new era, and we enter the John Warden era. And when we enter the John Warden era, this was the Combiner Wars moving forward. And this is when everything goes G1. Everything. So with Combiner Wars, it was mostly G1. Yeah, there was the odd G2 repaint here because, hey, what do you do with some of those molds outside of a G2 repaint? And yeah, there was the odd G.I. Joe homage, like they took the Combiner Wars Power Glide and turned it into the Viper from Cobra. And then you had like the odd Armada homage with the Combiner Wars Megatron into Armada Megatron. But otherwise, every other figure was based in Generation 1. And the same thing continued into Titan's Return. It was either Generation 1 or Generation 1 comic book with IDW flavor. That was it. Now, Power of the Prime was all G1, with the small exception of one figure, the fan-voted figure. The fan-voted figure was Optimus Primal, in this case, the Optimal Optimus Leader Class Power of the Primes. So it really was pretty clear what the fans wanted, as opposed to that heavy amount of Generation 1 that we had up to that point. And that's not to say that Combiner Wars didn't have some great stuff in there, but it was almost 99% Generation 1. When we go into then Siege and Earthrise, it's all Generation 1. Generation 1 or Generation 1 comic book IDW. That's all it is. Now, we didn't have BotCon anymore at that point. And at that point, all the stuff that I just mentioned before within the John Warden era, BotCon would give us the oddball stuff. Oh, we would get the non-G1 characters through BotCon, but that's not retailed. They could be very expensive, and if people don't have access to it, it could be pretty pricey. So, but BotCon really was the only way we were able to get non-G1 characters during that era. So it's something that when we entered Siege and Earthrise, that's where Generation Selects came in. and Hasbro Pulse, and that's where we kind of got our G2 repaints or our oddball, like, repaints, like a Unicron Trilogy repaint with Unicron Trilogy Hotshot from the the Siege Hound. So that's kind of where that was. So we could kind of get it there, but it still wasn't retail. Earthrise, Siege, G1 to the max. Then we get to Kingdom. Now, and this is where your argument could be, well, here's Kingdom. It's Beast Wars, right? So Kingdom originally, from what the rumors were told, and it's pretty much sums up when you really look at it, was originally Kingdom was supposed to be 1986 future G1 characters versus 1984-85 G1 characters. That was kind of the original plan. And you kind of see the seeds of it because you have the leader class Galvatron, you have the commander class Rodimus. It looks like that was the plan originally. That was the original go-to, kind of based on the PlayStation game, Call to the Future, if anyone knows that deep cut of Japanese video game Transformer history. But ultimately, in the end, that didn't happen. And while some of those characters remained in the line, like the Cyclonus and some of the others, it then became a G1 versus Beast Wars kind of line. And unfortunately, even though it is considered by many the Beast, line, when you really count it up, of the 38 Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom products that are out there, only 13 of them are Beast Wars related. The rest of them are either Generation 1 or the limited scant amount of fossilizer miscellanea, if you will. So it's pretty sad that that's the case. G1 was still the major player in Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom, and that's reflected even more so in the two staples of it being the Commander class with Rodimus Prime and the Titan class in the Ark. Now then, John Warden's no longer with the Transformer brand. He's now with Power Rangers. We enter a new era in 2022 with Lenny and the crew, and Mark and Evan, and we're returning more to that Aaron Archer era of celebrating all the brands, or to quote Grimlick here, the unified, incorporating all facets of the history of the brand. And with Transformers Legacy going into 2022, from the lists that we've seen of what the whole line is going to be in that initial retail rollout, just the retail rollout, not like the store exclusives or the Generation Selects, just the retail rollout itself, we have 19 G1 characters, 3 G2 characters, 3 Beast Wars characters, 2 Unicron Trilogy characters, one of those being our Titan class, 3 Transformer Prime characters, and 2 miscellanea, let's go with the new theme of the brand or the aesthetic of Legacy, much like what the fossilizers were, some new idea. So already off the bat, within that first year of 2022 with Legacy, we have something that's very in tune with what Generations was during the Aaron Archer era, or even before that, the Transformers Universe line, where there's a little spattering of everything, where all the fans could be celebrated of all the different walks of life. And this is very important to stress because while Transformers is a near 40-year-old brand now, not everyone grew up with G1. I grew up with G1, but there's kids that grew up with Beast Wars in the 90s. There's kids that grew up with Armada and the Unicron Trilogy in the 2000s. There's kids that grew up with the movie stuff and animated and Prime in the late 2000s. So there's different walks of life of fans, and you got to celebrate all those fans. Now, granted, this Legacy 2022 line, 19 G1 characters. There still is a heavy lean on G1, but there still is G2, Beast Wars, Unicron Trilogy, Transformers Prime. Yes, there's no animated. One day animated will get their chance, but right now, everything else is being celebrated. So it's there, where it was painfully absent for 6 years. 6 years prior. Combiner Wars, Titans Return, Power of the Prime, Siege, Earthrise. Yeah, we got it with Kingdom, but only 13 figures in retail. Yes, there's some stuff on the side. Again, Generation Select, some, Walmart, Amazon exclusives and stuff like that. But of the main retail, the easy stuff for fans to get, it was pretty clear what the bread and butter was going to be. And for 6 years, for 6 lines, it was G1. So now we're getting back to a mix-up. We're getting something that we're going to get a little bit of everything. And if the rumors of the Titan class are true, it's going to be a Unicron Trilogy Titan class, which some people might put their nose up in the air and say, ugh, I don't want that. But there's others that I saw that are quite excited about it. For me, I'm indifferent. Hey, I want something different. Look, I already have, the selfish part of me is like, well, I already have, Metroplex in so many different shapes and forms. It'd be nice to have something that's different this time around. But we will see what happens. But, I mean, that kind of gives you an idea. And pretty much to answer your question in a nutshell, and I knew this was a long-winded one, yes, Transformers Legacy is going to be that one unified aesthetic that incorporates all facets of the history of the brand. And it's going to return to that Aaron Archer era of celebrating all of Transformers, not just one part of it. And I hope that answers your question, Grimlock. And I hope everyone else is having a great holiday season coming up. And if you want to be like Grimlock and join the Transformer Slag Patreon, be like Grimlock and ask a listener question, or you just want to support the podcast, throw us a few bucks and hang out in the Discord or something, patreon.com/Protoman, or check the pinned comment or description below. And I just want to also mention, we did our voting, and tomorrow is going to be a live stream on Wednesday night for the Transformer Slag podcast live stream, because this Saturday is going to be Christmas and I just won't have time to do a Saturday night live stream on Christmas. So we are going to be doing it tomorrow. So be sure to check that out. That's going to be on the 22nd of December, 2021 at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 5 o'clock Pacific. We're going to be doing a big giveaway for our YouTube members as well as our Patreon members, so be sure to tune in for that and win some prizes. We're going to be opening up some gifts. We're going to be taking some super chats. We're going to have a guest with us. It's going to be a fun old time before the holiday season comes around, and we're going to all be with our friends and family. So I just wanted to put out one more out there so I could give back to the fans. So be sure to tune in for that. And again, guys, like I always say, let's rock out with the robots in disguise.